Okay, if you can go ahead and take your seats within the next 30 seconds. I know the service is fantastic in Singapore, so I'm going to ask our host not to take the glass of water away because I'm going to start our debate like this. The session is the innovation mantra, the key to Asian competitiveness, and I'm making the link between innovation and competitiveness. We've got about an hour and 15 minutes together. We've got a fantastic panel representing countries from India, Japan, Singapore, China, and some thoughts from the U.S. as well. I put the glass there because there's a good debate that could take place in Asia right now when it comes to both competitiveness and innovation. Is the glass half empty or is the glass half full when it comes to Asia's ability to remain competitive and Asia's ability to continually innovate? Now, year in, year out, of course, if you look at, for example, the World Economic Forum competitiveness survey, you have Singapore, Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan always in the top 15. And it's not just of the West surveys, which is a good indicator, but of most surveys. And you have a middle-income country like Malaysia, which has plans to join the industrialized list of countries by 2020, always in the top 25. Now, all seem to share a common DNA or common traits. And those sitting in the room know what those are: big on productivity, big on workforce training, solid education backgrounds, financial market transparency, and the rule of law, some of those soft features that make an economy and a country very competitive. Now, this came up during our sessions yesterday and again this morning. Often less well known in the region are some of the less competitive countries, those that are not able to innovate or really have to worry about reducing poverty. And that is, the debate now is really about lifting the entire boat throughout Asia to get those some 1.9 billion people who are living on less than $2 a day participating in the competition and the competitiveness of Asia. That's a challenge, of course, for the 21st century. During our time together, I'd like to really kind of break down the essence of competitiveness and the essence of innovation, like a DNA, to look at the compounds of different countries throughout the region and why some countries continue to remain very competitive and why they continue to innovate and how often they have to renew themselves for innovation. We're going to go across our panel for very brief opening talks or comments, just to flag post some of the most important issues as they see them today when it comes to innovation. I'd like to call on a bank that has taken its expertise in the market of India, which is a very large market, needless to say, and starting to move those products and those innovations to other markets. Mr. Kamath is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of ICICI Bank of India. Mr. Kamath, do you want to start on some of the key essential elements as you see them today for innovations and certain products you're willing to roll out internationally from India now that you have that expertise? Please.
Thank you. I would look at it this way. I take what you suggest now. Let's say $2 per capita per day. How do you serve this customer? A customer earning $600 or $700 a year. You can't serve this customer on the same platforms that you would serve a customer in the West, because the ticket sizes are a fraction of what you would find in the West, probably a tenth of what they are in the West. I think that's where the innovation process starts. One, straight away from the point of view of, do you have a product which you can offer to this customer at a cost, let us say, which is 1/10 of what a Western competitor provides? And you then start resolving that problem. I think that is where you get into the whole issue of building up, I would say, competitive ability through innovation. In our own case, just as an example, we believe that we serve our customer on a technology cost which is 1/10 per transaction of that of any Western bank. You have to think radically to do that, and you have to put in processes which are radical to do that, but yet to be within all the KYC norms, AML norms, and the banking best practices. When you push the envelope and then say that we want to now serve the rural Indian customer, where I think per capita incomes are even lower, and I would say the average ticket size will be 1/10 of that in the rest of India, you are now competing with yourself to innovate even further, to create products for the rural masses. And that is a market that you cannot neglect. In India, it is 600 million people living in 600,000 villages. It's a huge challenge, but at the same time, it's a huge opportunity. And unless you innovate, unless you are able to fit the innovation results to what you want to do in terms of products, you cannot you cannot succeed. The last point is, once you succeed in doing this, I'm talking of banking, but it's true of any other business, you then ask yourself a question: is there a global model which I can now take out and maybe play on the world stage? But in our case, I think the challenge first starts with meeting the needs of India. And in that context, if you have something innovative, you are able to innovate, create a competitive advantage, establish that, and then you can think in terms of scaling it up. So at this stage, I think in our own business, we are at a level where we are saying that we're getting it right for India, and slowly taking it abroad and saying, can we use these competitive abilities to a good merit in a global context?
Great, thanks. We'll come back to you in terms of the challenges you have internally. For example, does government assist you in this process of taking those products internationally, or do you meet resistance? And if you do, is the government getting better and better at letting you foster innovations within the economy to create jobs? I'll come back to you on that if I can. Mr. Kurokawa, you're a science advisor for the Prime Minister, and I chaired a panel yesterday on energy security, and one thing that stood out now is that Japan's redefining its unique selling proposition for Asia, because it's not alone as a constant innovator, if you will. It probably had that post to itself, 40, 50 years ago, and we know the economic growth and the drive of Japan to constantly innovate.
Right.
What's the role for Japan now, as you see countries like the partner to your right, Singapore, constantly rating very high in the competitiveness charts, to define what it's going to do to be an innovation leader in Japan? What do you see as the key priorities?
Thank you, but one question. I didn't share that session yesterday.
No, I did. Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, just I'd like to sort of start with some sort of historical perspective, because I believe human nature doesn't change that much. So like all the driving force of this economic growth over the last maybe 200 years started with Industrial Revolution 1970-71, which lasted until 1829. Then steam and railway came. That was a new paradigm. That's a big bang. That lasted until 1873. Then steel, electricity, and heavy engineering. That came. And then age of oil, automobile, that was 1908, from Ford T and also cheap oil, and internal combustion engine, airplane, everything. That was last perhaps 100 years, for 1908 to 1974. Then what happened? This is 1971 was Intel. That is the beginning of Big Bang of this information technology. So this became a big driving force to make this globalization. So now, what is the difference in support this Big Bang and huge surge and frenzy and bubble burst and then stabilizing development? That's what's happening. And the characteristics of this information technology is, one is decentralized integration, network structures, knowledge become a capital, intangible value become added, and heterogeneity, diversity, adaptability become a key. And that is the reason everybody starts talking about innovation. Because if you see the innovation, where you have seen innovation, for example, like the computer search of innovation in the title of any academic paper in business, or whatever that is, from 1970 to 1995, it's flat. But all of a sudden, from 97, it starts to rise very rapidly. Before that, everybody's talking about invest on science and technology. But what the difference is, you have to deliver. So I think there's a globalization. Another characteristic is proliferation of markets and proliferation of niches. That's where the new business models come in. So the last paradigm of, let's say, Japanese model is more like supply side chain. So like now this become more like a lot of niches of different consumers and different market needs. How you deliver, how you capture the variety of diverse niches and open up this new market. See what happened. World Wide Web in 92, Netscape, Windows 95, Yahoo, and Linux, and then Google was incorporated in 1997. first investment was 1998. So that became very fast worldwide. So the paradigm of new industry become quite different. So that's where innovation, that means whatever the ideas or innovative idea, invention, has to be delivered to certain segment of market, which may become a fairly rapidly spread or fail. So that's where innovation is. Therefore, the Japanese traditional success may have a very strong asset, for example, like Toyota. That is more incremental innovation. But this become more like, could be a very destructive innovation, and that is a challenge to Japan.
Not just Japan, I'd like to ask you before I pass it to Jim Goodnight. So you're saying when you start the R&D cycle, it should be targeted at a niche in the consumer market at a much earlier stage.
Well, I don't know, but I think at least a recent model of, let's say, even retail of Zara, of the Spanish company, I mean, they just deliver from consumers' request almost once a week new products in the wear, like kids, just daily wear. And so the consumer comes back every week because there may be some new thing which will be gone in a week. So that's a new model, and it's become capturing a lot of consumers. So I think that is a different way of thinking for the corporate.
Very good. Jim, do you want to take us to your initial thoughts, and I'll follow up with some of the DNA traits of the U.S. technology market that Mr. Kurokawa brought up. Well, how do you see it now in terms of Asia's ability to constantly innovate and the challenges it faces?
Well, innovation is something that has to be nurtured and grown in any organization anywhere in the world. At SAS, we've always tried to create a work environment that allows creative people to flourish. I think Richard Florida wrote about the creative class. And the creative class of people they like to live in cities with museums and lots of things to do, cultural things. And so that's one of the important things of innovation is to have creative people living in an area that's very dynamic and very changing. So corporations and businesses have a lot to do to set the stage for innovation by creating an environment that it can flourish in. We found that the other very, very important area for innovation is the customer. You know, the customer has problems, they have needs that need to be solved, and if we can solve problems for one customer, then there are likely many, many others that have those same needs. So what we tend to do is to work very closely with our customers, and they help us come up with new ideas and new solutions, and they help us innovate. So rather than just being solely sitting there innovating on our own, we actually ask people, well, what do you need? And that works remarkably well. I think the whole .com bubble and bust was because people were investing millions and millions of dollars in technologies that nobody actually needed or wanted. So working with customers, using their ideas is certainly a good way to do it. One of the other areas of encouraging innovation is also through government regulations or government restrictions. In the U.S., we do have an R&D tax credit that gives us a little extra tax money from the government if we increase our R&D spending each year. So we get a credit on the amount of R&D increase that we spent. So that helps to stimulate the desire to put more money into R&D because you are going to get a little bit of money back from the government for it. But also government policies can be extremely restrictive, and they can prevent innovation from happening. I think one of the examples there is in Europe, where the governments have gotten so restrictive on the pharmaceutical companies that they no longer are interested in developing drugs in Europe. They have moved all of their testing and clinical trial work outside of Europe into the U.S., and quite a bit now is also going to India. So government regulation, government stimulation can play a great role in innovation.
Good, thanks. I'd like to turn to Lim Siong-Guan of the Singapore Economic Development Board. We had a discussion, and I talked about it in my opening comments, about the ability for Singapore to always rank very high in terms of the competitiveness charts. And you talked about LSD, of course not the drug that you want people to be taking before they go make a pitch on why companies should be coming to Singapore to base themselves, but it's a completely different definition of LSD. Do you want to start there and talk to us a little bit about how Singapore can stay in the top ranks, what you do inside to constantly remain very competitive and to constantly drive innovations to bring new investors here to Singapore?
Yeah. Well, thanks very much. Basically, I was saying that in order to drive people to all the time be thinking about reinventing or recreating for the future, I think you have to recognize Singapore's position. We are a very small place, we are a very small economy. We're completely dependent on what happens outside there in the world, whether it be in the corporate world or in politics and relations between countries and so forth. And so and naturally we have all the time to be extremely alert as to what is happening out there. All the time trying to be in time for the future, position ourselves for that future, to be able to take opportunities and try to mitigate some of the problems that come along the way. And so basically we tell our people that we need a heavy dose of LSD. You know, the LSD in 1970s is where people take it to get their highs and hallucinations. I suppose we say that we need a Singapore LSD in order to have your highs on imagination and innovation. LSD really, for the L we say stands for lead. You know, it's lead, speed, and differentiate. Lead really is this idea that it's very difficult to be in front. It's always easier in a sense to be second, because you look at what the guy in front of you is doing and you try to do it better, you try to do it faster. But if you have to be in front and somebody yapping at your feet, you know all the time that you have to be thinking something new. All the time you have to be in front of the game. So we think that one of the critical dimensions in innovation is not only talking about the process of innovation or how to help innovation, but really trying to get into our people, and in the case of Singapore, to try to get into our government agencies. This need, you know, is an inner drive which says you just have to be there and you have to address the question of leading first. The second is the issue of speed. We find in Singapore that, you know, quite obviously we're not the cheapest place to do business in. However, what we do is to try to mitigate the risk for businesses. When people try to do the investments, they try to make the investment decision as late as possible in order to mitigate the risk of the market. At the same time, they know and they would like that from the day they make the investment decision to the time they get the production out, that has to be as short a time as possible. And most times they say, by the time I make a decision, I wish that I were in production yesterday. So what we do in Singapore is to say speed is a terribly important aspect of our competitive advantage. So getting agencies together to be working together to help each other get the project out fast. Talking to the companies on a no obligation basis to say, can we train people beforehand? Sometimes we say, can we train people in your facilities beforehand? We foot the bill, you train the chaps. If the investment comes through, nice for you. If the investment doesn't come through, we train our people in a technology and in an area which we think is useful for us, but then perhaps somebody else can then use the training that we've given. So really thinking in terms of how do you organize yourself to give this element of speed, to be able to respond to the needs of companies and to be able to get them productive as quickly as possible. The third aspect is differentiation, that we cannot be in the same game as everybody else. When Singapore started an industrialization program, it was an East plus West formula. Bring MNCs from the developed world, they bring technology, they bring management know-how, and most of all, they bring global markets. And to that, we put workers from Singapore who are disciplined, who are prepared to work hard, to learn new tricks, to take instruction in English, add education and infrastructure, and there you have the Singapore growth formula, which is East plus West. But everybody who is serious about economic development today is on the same formula. And quite obviously, they have lower labor cost factors, land cost factors, and therefore we cannot be in that game. So we thought about it and decided that we'll grow the future on capital-intensive, knowledge-intensive, and innovation-intensive enterprises. But fundamentally, we grow the future based on 4 competitive factors, which we call TKCL. The first one is trust. We're talking about quality and productivity, and rule of law and IP protection, strong stand against corruption, and basically we deliver on the promises that we give. The second is about knowledge, to say we want to be a knowledge hub, a talent magnet, going up on R&D the whole way from corporate labs to academic research, talking about complex manufacturing, engineering, design, and development. So how do we create that knowledge base, and how do we create a talent pool to be able to support us going up the value chain? The third C is the idea of connectivity, or connectedness. It's not just being a premier air and sea hub. It's also, as we say, our whole network of treaties for avoidance of double taxation and about free trade agreements, but most particularly a network of people who are familiar with us, people who will stand up for us and work together with us. Some people talk about just a network of family, friends, and fans. And finally, life is talk about quality of living environment, clean and safe, clean and green environment, safe streets, higher education standards, a place where you can find all the amenities of modern life and quality of living. And so that's our aspect of differentiation. So fundamentally, we say as a government, we need to get everybody to understand you just need this heavy dose of LSD in order to keep in front of the game and keep reinventing yourself. And once we get that message across, then we find that our agencies, they're very open, they're extremely business-oriented. So we talk to business on the basis of what do you need in the coming years, and we say, just work with us, and we try to plan for that future. And hopefully, when you are ready to do your investment, we are ready with the infrastructure and with the facilities to allow you to do good business.
I remember doing an interview with Andy Grove of Intel in the mid-90s, and this is when Intel was at its peak, and obviously prior to his retirement, and sitting with he and Gordon Moore about the ability to have Intel constantly innovate and face low-cost competitors, for example, from Taiwan. In the Singapore example, do you think now, because the competition is so fierce in Asia, that the paranoid survive? Only the paranoid really stay ahead of the competition. This was Grove's mantra, as you know. Yeah. Does Singapore have to look over its shoulder right now because Vietnam is coming in and is a pretty strong competitor just across the water? You have Malaysia wants to join to be an industrialized country by 2020. It's got a lower cost advantage than Singapore has to offer. Is there a sense of urgency to constantly push in Singapore against your competitors nearby?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Then, but we take that as the reality of life. So you have to watch out as to what new things are happening and what advantage you can take of it. But I must say one thing, that some of our biggest projects that we've lost, once we tried to bring to Singapore and we've lost, actually we've lost to the developed countries. We've lost to Germany, we've lost to the US. It's because that's where the competition is. Because a lot of technology, a lot of the high value add type activity that we are looking for are things which are being done in the developed countries rather than talking about Vietnam. So we try to link up with Vietnam and try to link up with Indonesia, for example, to say how do we offer to investors something where they can do high-end work in Singapore and lower cost work elsewhere in the region. But at the same time, we have to watch out for the fact that a lot of the competition that we face actually is also with the developed countries.
That's part of the selling proposition then. You'll put the dual essence of a Singapore partnered up with a Vietnam on the table then when you're talking to an investor.
Yes.
Good. Very apropos to your point here about some of the other countries you wouldn't think of as bases for software development. Now, we wouldn't have thought of China as a base for software development. That's where Neusoft is from, Shenyang. Dr. Liu, how would you really define what your company is doing and how you use that base? As Jim said, you're not in what would be seen as one of the knowledge centers of the world, but you're able to grow rapidly from your base. How is that done in your area?
I think, firstly, the cost of innovation is very much sensitive to all the companies and also in the world. So because customers don't like to pay the money for the cost of innovation. They don't care about IC chips or potato chips. They pay the money they like to pay. That make that green a great change in the innovation model, and also we face a kind of, age of innovation globalization. You see, many of the multinational companies now, they move their R&D, their innovation to the country like China, India, and Russia. And the reason is they can find the same kind of talent in the much lower cost. So the competitive advantage is, of course, is nation, is country, also company. But today, the world that make the competitive is from individuals. So China is a country with a lot of talent. We have 6 million graduates, students, and every year. And now we have 500,000 of students studying abroad. But now, because of booming of economic of China, now they start to move back to China. I think most important for China, the challenge is not the talent, not people. The challenge is the mind of the innovation, a kind of a culture of innovation. Just like yesterday at the party, we are here, we talk about the people don't believe the Chinese can do the business with the Japanese. That is the kind of imaging they have. So just like my father tell me, you never do business with the Japanese, and the reason is they have some pre-imaging about the relationship of Chinese and the Japanese. Because this, we lock it ourselves. We don't know how to use the resources. We don't know how to work together with others. My experience, I have very good cooperation with Japanese in past 16 years. We have 20 more excellent partners. It's not only development software. We have a kind of a new innovation model. I call open innovation. We like both parties have a talent work together. We build a kind of a management committee, just like a virtual corporation. We have a virtual board because that is now bundled in capital. But we make very effective and low cost, high quality innovation for not only for today, for next 10 years, like a smart car and like a car driving assistance or something. So I think China faces a lot of opportunity, but because our system, and we are planning system in 30 years ago, the people follow up the government instruction. The government is good, they have some budget and money to encourage of innovation, but it is a very low efficient innovation because they don't know what is the need of the marketplace. Also, they don't know what is the price they need to innovate the technology. And so I think that we call the word is fly. The fly means the innovation is not only an issue of the technology. Mostly it's a culture and mindset, and also we need to find the new models, especially for the country like China. That stage of innovation is not for the country like China. It's occupied by developing country like US and Europe, like Japan. But today, more and more developing country, China and India, move to that stage. So we need to shorten the period to make the new technology. I think the best way is work together to have a vision in globalization and also to partner together with excellent the partner in the world.
In your region of China, is the government understanding the needs to get to the market more quickly with new innovations and assisting in this?
Yes.
Heard the Singapore model, and in terms of it wants to foster innovation, it's constantly in that seat of wanting to assist companies in that role. Are you getting that sort of assistance yourself?
The government have so many encourage projects to encourage that kind of innovation. We have so many foundations and the company, university, or individuals, you can got some small part of money from government. Also, the government is very smart. If you use that money, you need to have more money to integrate with that. For example, if you got 10% of money from government, you need to use 90% money, your own money. So, but the problem is, who's driving those kind of a project, the direction or choice? And we are not very efficient. I don't think that is the issues of only of China. If you say the word, so many, the innovation is just a kind of cost. So the people spend a lot of money, try to make innovation, but the result is not so good. The reason is they don't know what is need. Even they know the need, they have a exactly right direction, but the cost cannot be accepted by the commercial world. So that means you got those kind of results, but never can apply those kind of result to the product. So China, that is a big problem. For example, we have so many very good universities. So the big talent pools in China. 20 years ago, most of excellent students to move to abroad. They try to get opportunity in U.S. and Japan and Europe. But now they come back. So how to integrate the activity of government with commercial enterprises, even how to integrate resources of university with the industry, I think that is the issues. But from a university view, China is a few country to make very big reform in education system. You may don't know that Neusoft comes from a university. We call NEU soft. NEU means Northeastern University. University is the shareholder of the Neusoft. We listed this company in 1996. We are first software company listed in stock market. The reason is we got the talent from university. We transfer many of technology from university. One of the example is medical the system. So now we have a joint venture with Philips. But the original technology is from university. We have a technology like a security from university. Now we have joint venture with Nokia. They use our security software embedded in their devices. So we have something not good, something is good, but we still need to reform a kind of innovation system from a government, university, and I think the enterprises in China is still very weak, and they face a kind of challenges saved from manufacturing-oriented to the innovation or services-oriented industry.
Good. I didn't realize the role of the university in terms of your product development, and I want to come back to the role of universities in terms of innovations and competitiveness for the region. If you look at competitiveness surveys, which one of the interesting traits that have always stood out to me is that those countries that are natural traders, physical traders, have always done very well in competitiveness surveys. And I think it's because they're used to going out into the world and bringing things back, whether it's hard goods or products. This is the case for Hong Kong, of course, Singapore, the UK has used that model, the United States, of course, Holland has always been the case. But now we have a reverse innovation here. We have a Dutchman in India. This is my transition to you. In a commodity exchange in India outside of Mumbai. I'd love to get your perspectives on Asian competitiveness, Asian innovation, but from the viewpoint of your work with the commodity exchange in India. Lehman, you want to take it from there?
Yeah. Technology is, I think, crucial, and your ability to innovate is a major differentiator. I think most Asian companies, looking back, once started purely on the basis of cost arbitrage. They did things more cheaply than Western companies. But I think over time, all of them realized that they needed to move to intellectual property, and for that you need to innovate. There are two forms, if you want, of innovation. One is serendipity. You need to provide room as a company for coincidental innovations. But the more important aspect of innovation is that it's focused. Innovation is the result of a search for the most efficient solutions for a certain problem. So it's very important that as a company you identify those problems. You identify the problems that you think you can solve, and you have a very clear vision in that area, in that direction. Second aspect of innovation, imagination without implementation is hallucination. Innovation is not just a matter of thinking of new products, new processes, but also of putting into place a whole set of new performance standards that actually allow you to bring these improvements to the marketplace. There are different ways to innovate. There are sustaining innovations, there are disruptive innovations. I believe Asia is very well placed for disruptive innovations, and disruptive innovations that will give Asia a global competitiveness. And this is partially or largely linked to the nature of the Asian marketplace. Massive number of people live at less than $2 a day. Now, if you want to reach that public, you need to come up with very, very innovative mechanisms, very innovative processes. As a company, you can focus on that public. In our case, our objective is to democratize goods and services that previously were available only to limited number of people, bring them to the masses. And that forces you not just to think of new products, but also of new processes to bring those goods down to the ground, to the level of purchasing power, to the practical issues like lack of reliable electricity supply that public faces. So, very clear vision drives innovation. The public that you have, the potential market that you have in Asia, can allow you to develop very forceful, disruptive innovation, and this will drive Asian competitiveness.
You're quite an interrupter in terms of the exchange itself. I mean, where do you see your role versus, say, the Chicago Board of Trade or the London Commodity Exchange, and how much freedom are you given in India to innovate and trade a wide basket of products?
Well, innovation, we are primarily active in, if you want to interface between the commodity and the financial sector. And both sectors are highly, highly regulated in India. And they're regulated taking into account the mechanisms of the past. All the processes, this is a problem I think that ICICI Bank shares. All the processes, all the mechanisms are based on the way things were done in the past. If you come up with an innovative way of doing things, in innovative products, there are lots of bureaucratic obstacles. It's very, very difficult to innovate in the face of existing government policies, existing bureaucratic processes. Nevertheless, there's a lot you can do. We share the name of Western exchanges. We are a commodity exchange, but the way that we do our business is very, very different, because we want to bring our products down to the ground, to the villages. We don't want to have our terminals in the large cities. We want to have them in 7,000 marketplaces, many of which have no reliable access to electricity. So our technology, we work with computers that operate on car batteries that are connected to the exchange through small satellite receivers. And you have to do that at a cost that is affordable to a mid-sized trader or cooperative out there in the countryside. And again, with a very strong management vision behind it, you can actually deliver on those objectives. And the technology that you then end up with is a technology that has global significance.
Well, okay, I'm going to come into the audience to take some questions, but before I do so, I want to pose a kind of a scenario to the to the panel here. Mr. Kurokawa, I'd like to start with you, Professor. Looking at innovation clusters, Jim, I'd like you to jump into this as well. The U.S. is, and the reason I think it continues to lead in terms of technology innovations is it's always had this culture of technology clusters, whether it's around Silicon Valley, North Carolina, around the Northeast corridor with Harvard and MIT, of course, as a base for innovations. Can Asia now really concentrate its new innovations around university structures as different hubs? And in China, you said, Dr. Liu, that you have been able to pull from that university technologies. Is this really the next real intense push for Asia, is to really enhance education, to be targeted at innovations, not just at training their workforces? Do you want to start, Mr. Kurokawa?
Okay. I think at least it is information infrastructure and sort of globalization, and also many of the seeds and technology and also idea researches that tend to come from academia. So I think a cluster become a fairly important sort of sources and seeds of new sort of ideas and some development. But you have to deliver to the market. That is the reason cluster. So the cluster become very important, but also local and also global. There's a lot of interaction become possible. It has not been possible before that. So I think the cluster would play a very, very important role. And in Asia, I think it's heterogeneity and diversity should be an asset. I think in that respect, Japan has been sort of much strength in homogeneity. But so I'm really insisting next generation of education has to become more like adaptability and heterogeneity and diversity should become one of the value or core value of education. I think that's I like to press on this Japanese policy.
Are you suggesting that students, Mr. Kurokawa,
yes,
from Japan go get educations or a master's degree in Hong Kong or go to China? Is it
yes,
is that what you're fostering here?
Sure. Even start with much earlier age. Let's say junior high school, summer like homestay program. We'd like to expand more.
Good. Jim, do you want to give us the ability within the U.S. university structure to partner with companies around innovation belts and why that is a key element to Asia's future competitiveness in your view? Do you want to jump in there?
Well, certainly my own state of North Carolina has been one of the early developers of the concept of clustering businesses around universities. The Research Triangle Park, which is between the University of NC State University, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and Duke University, the triangle that these three universities make, right in the middle of it is a thriving research community of some 500 or 600 different companies that have their research there. Now, a few years ago, probably about 10 years ago, NC State University acquired some additional land beside its campus and decided to build what they call a millennial campus. And we have a lot of other universities in North Carolina that are copying this idea. And the idea is to bring companies right onto the campus of the university to do research. That way the engineering faculty, the engineering graduate students, students from all different areas of the university can get part-time jobs or fellowships there at these companies and sort of work and go to school at the same time. And that's a trend we're going to see that's going to just roll throughout the United States, trying to bring more companies adjacent and become part of the university. The great thing about that is it keeps the universities present day. They're not teaching what they taught 10 years ago. They're having to stay current and stay up with the changing times.
Good. I've got a number of questions I'd like to bring up myself, but we have a lot of hands going up, so we're going to go to the audience. So just ask if you identify yourself and then direct the question to one or two of the panelists, if you could, please. Thanks.
I'm Dali Yang from the University of Chicago. I'm also the incoming director of the East Asian Institute in Singapore. When we discuss innovation, sooner or later we come to the issue of the protection of intellectual property, and this has been especially a major issue in the emerging markets, let's say China and India. And in the Chinese case, the conventional wisdom is piracy of software is very high in terms of the rates. But in the meantime, the major multinationals are building up research and development centers in China. So this is a very mixed picture. So I would like to direct the question to Mr. Liu, therefore, so do you think that the Chinese government, both at the central level and the local levels, are doing are improving the situation? Are they doing an adequate job? And particularly as you are an indigenous company and you see the things from the ground up in that case. And in the Indian case, the same question to Mr. Kamath. There is the issue, the rule of law is stronger there, but in the meantime it can be haltingly and grindingly slow as well. Can companies that are innovating there get the kind of right kind of protection?
Good. Thanks. Let's take it. Yes, Doctor, go ahead.
It is a very popular question. It's a very hard question. I answered that question, several hundred times already in the past in international some conference like this. I think that is the issues of China. That is exactly damaging our imaging of China. That is a problem like the many of opportunity given to Chinese company is lost because that's very bad imaging. But if you say the details, just like I talk about story, all people talk about China is country not respect the IPR. That is the issue. Just like when I do business, I got input to never do business with Japanese. But in fact, if you come to say the detail, China have more and more, get more and more the company, they know how to respect the IPR, how to respect the value of their customer. They know that is the value of their company. Without those kind of, the basic principle, they cannot make such a business even in domestic market and international market. So the example of Neusoft is we have 20 more international big chain of the customer. So they like Neusoft to develop something is like R&D. And some of them we own the IPR by both our party. Some of them they own the IPR. We must have a kind of a system, such as we need a physical security. Like all the rooms, not anybody can come in. We have a camera, and also they don't allow the room have a ceiling. It be open everywhere. We have agreement with our employee. If you involve those kind of projects, you never touch, not never, at least in some period, you cannot touch same kind of the business, even you cannot join the competitor. So if they have some problem, we can show him. And also we have a kind of a training courses, like every people now respect the IPR, that is respect ourselves. That is the value of company. You may do something wrong, but it's a big impact to the imaging of our company or value of our company. So I think that be changed. If you say that China still have the problem like a DVD, like a game, we are very much concerned those kind of issues because we are a software company. When we found this company in 1991, I faced those kind of, the challenge. We make the software package, have very good sales, but only 1 year. I look at the balance sheet, the revenue get down and down. The reason is the software be copied by many of small software companies. But now I can tell you is no one copy Neusoft software. We have 8,000 the customer in China, and many of is excellent market share. We have 50% market share in social insurance, 30% market share in telecommunication, and we have 10% in power industry. We have 30% in government and also enterprises. So all those kind of a solution, we have 12,000 employees. Every day we generate IPR. We generate our technology. We make innovation. So We are, as a party, like others, people respect us, and also we are a party to respect others. So you can say some still, serious situation, but I do believe the trends will be changed.
Dr. Liu, thanks very much for that. It's one of the things that I find quite interesting. Every time, I think it's every 6 to 8 months, the Chinese government takes some big bulldozers, and it's the product of the every half year. They run over, first they were running over fake watches on IPR, right, going back to your point, and then they would pick CD-ROMs, and then they've moved to DVDs. Yeah. But you're saying the maturity in terms of protecting IPR on the higher end of the value changes is improving, right? Yeah. This believability has always been the challenge, I think, when you see symbolic gestures like this to run over CDs, which doesn't seem to ring certainly true. KB, do you want to take it up from the Indian standpoint here and protection? I'm going to just ask our panelists to be a little bit brief because we've got so many questions from the audience. Go ahead.
The situation was the same in India some time back. I guess things are improving. The same reasons. I think there is consciousness now, there's education now, there's awareness now. And very interestingly, I find that the ultimate solution probably is technology itself. I'll give a very small example. And the cost of technology. DVD piracy was a big problem in India, and India produces probably the largest number of movies in the world. So just the other day, I heard an announcement from a large disc manufacturer, compact disc manufacturer, that they had bought out a library of something like 7,000 or 10,000 movies. And they would make available the movie at something like 30 rupees, that is 75 cents a movie. So now you disrupt the whole need to pirate, because you now have a DVD available with original quality in it, at less than $1. I think this is the way I think going forward this will be resolved. In India, indeed, there is awareness now and there is heightened action.
Good. Thanks very much for being direct. Question from the floor, again directed to one person. Go ahead, John.
My name is Jack Sim from the World Toilet Organization. I'd like to shift the mindset a little bit away from the current direction. Basically, innovation is going at the top of the pyramid. Everybody is trying to compete to sell to the elite, to sell to the rich. And this creates a very, very high level of competition. I asked a lot of developed country companies, and their net profit is 5%. And to me, this is not very high profit, yet they seem to be very happy with it. And if you consider that below the pyramid, just take an example of sanitation. There are 2.6 billion people without toilets, and there is no supplier, because the people who are supplying are all focusing on the top of the pyramid. Now, if you have a dysfunctional market like that, it creates a tremendous opportunity to design simplified products.
Excuse me, we're just going to ask you to be super direct with the question.
Okay.
Yes, that's not a speech. Just... Right. Thanks.
So what I would like to ask the panel is, shall we go and focus on a market that the demand is not served and will be much more competitive than we are serving the market that is very, very highly intense?
Okay. Thanks very much. It's a good question, actually. Mr. Kamath and Mr. Kurokawa, if you want to take it.
I think the point is very valid, and this is valid not only for sanitation, it's valid for water, clean water, and so on, health and so on. And when we talk of rural India, when we talk of any rural population in a less developed country, then the same challenges apply. It applies to sanitation, it applies to water, it applies to even, let us say, cooking aids, whether you have the right type of fuel and what sort of burner do you use. And I guess that a lot needs to be done. A small start has been done in India, but needs to be scaled up. The point is well taken.
Mr. Kurokawa.
Now, also I indicated like 5 surge of new sort of paradigm since Industrial Revolution, but this time information technology spread out throughout the world and globalization. But one more thing is there's a constraint to the limit of the growth, that is climate change, energy, food and water, poverty, HIV, AIDS, and maybe 10 million people are just dying of starvation and diarrhea. You're right. So that's become a sort of raised consciousness of the global community. And that is the reason even CSR, corporate social responsibility, like 80% or 70 to 80% become intangible asset. I think they begin to see that. So the corporate activity become not only as shareholders responsible to the shareholders, but for the sort of stakeholders of much more global community. I think that's corporate is going to strive for.
Mr. Lim, I'd like to ask you from the Singaporean perspective, if you're offering a company a 5% profit margin, you'd be doomed. I would imagine that's not the proposition you're offering here in Singapore. So to follow up on the point of the gentleman's question, does Singapore, though, need to stay at the top end of the market because that's where it adds its value? Do you want to address that, or are you shooting wider?
Well, I would say that we have to stay at the top end. At the top end of the market so far as the industry goes, simply because our cost factors are too high. On the other hand, just to address the question specifically, I think we have to say that it's a two-pronged approach that has to be taken. One is, of course, businesses are going to do what makes business sense for them. So that if they see the mass market as something that they can innovate and technology can enable them to do, I'm sure businesses will get into that area. So I don't think that we can go around and simply say that, why don't businesses just go serve this market which is unserved? Because quite obviously their eyes will have to be open and they have to study to see whether they can serve. On the other hand, I do think that government has a social responsibility, has a social commitment here. And so governments also have to look in terms of who are the unserved parts of their citizenry, and say, what can you do about it? In some instances, you have to come in and you have to help, you have to incentivize businesses to serve that market. I just make one other comment, and that is the point being made about IT, because this is, education and IT now is a huge equalizer, and really, if governments will enable the facility for people to have access to IT, that itself would be a big boost to serving the answer.
Good. I always think of the right and left brain between the creativity and the facts. This is a definitely right and left brain audience because all the questions are coming from the right side. The lady in red, we'll come back to that. Go ahead, the question there, and then we go to the gentleman here. Yeah.
Rodora Palomarcas-Nedi from Unilever, and my question is addressed to the panel. A premise that was given for fostering innovation is diversity of teams. And thus, I would also conclude that innovation is enabled by product and process innovation are enabled by social innovation. And yet the discussion has not been set on that. Specifically, I'm talking about Asians in Western multinationals and women in management. And I would dare ask, what is the panel, both companies and public policy makers, going to do or are doing to ensure that you have diversity in your own teams?
Good question in terms of corporate social responsibility as well, fostering the next generation of leaders in the ranks of females. Who wants to take that on? Mr. Kamath and Mr. Kurokawa.
Our solution has been very simple in this context. We run a meritocracy at the board level. Out of, let's say, managing directors and directors who are on the board, half are women in ICICI group, and at the next senior management levels, the same thing endures. And I've been asked this question innumerable times. How did you make it happen? We did not make it happen. We let a meritocracy prevail, and it happened. So my answer to this question is very simple. If corporations are open-minded about running a true meritocracy in terms of recruitment, promotion, not differentiating, I repeat, not differentiating, and allow either gender to rise to the top, you will have balance, as there is balance in life. That is our observation. I think that's what most corporations ought to do.
There's a true no-barrier policy within the bank. You can say that now. The ranks of the females are coming through pretty quickly.
We don't differentiate in terms of whether this work is meant for a man or a woman. I don't believe there's any work meant for a man or a woman. Everybody is capable of doing every job. And you rise with merit. And I think you find gender balance in the final equation.
Before I go to Mr. Kurokawa, I was surprised in the Chinese model when I've gone to various summits. The powerful women of China is quite extraordinary within the finance ministry, for example, within the trade and transportation ministries. This is not something that was known to the outside world, but it is prevalent. The women do drive a great deal of policy in China.
We very much respect women because they make a great contribution to our business. So they are very smart, especially for software business. They are patient and detailed, and they make excellent quality of delivery of a product. So in our executive level, like a financial sector, 80% of people is women. And our marketing people is women. And we have 5 taker ladies. They have more power than men, and also they are very dedicated to their job, very professional. So not only to give him a position. The women in China is we have exactly fair system like payment. Also, they may have more vacation than men, and we have like the areas, our working areas. Because women, no one allowed, they have smoking in the working space. And also we have dedicated the space and the serve to a woman. And also we have a kind of benefit and to give the offer. I think the China is maybe that kind of system like a little bit look like a U.S. So many of women did excellent job in business areas. So they make a success, and also they got a very good return.
Mr. Kurokawa?
Yes, I think that has been traditionally, every country has the same issue. And I think there's a question about this women as the top leadership. I agree. I think this constraint of the climate change and all the other environment and also poverty, I think there are many NGO activities that shows you the raising public awareness of these disadvantaged people. And in fact, if you pick up this foreign affairs, which is on distribution this May, June issue, there's one essay on this woman in the leadership, and that's very interesting because even many countries and political leadership, number of women is very underrepresented. But I think NGOs, many women, a much greater number of women at the top. I mean, because that may become one of the phenomena in the future. I think there's a lady asking a question. I think, for example, many women is really helping sort of underprivileged people as an NGO and social entrepreneurship, and become one of the key for this future issue.
Okay, the name escapes me, but who's the former head of the UNHCR from Japan?
Yeah, Madame Ogata.
Yeah, she's
great.
Highly respected, yeah. And still continues to make a big difference in this community as well.
Right.
We have a question from the gentleman here. Just be direct with the person you wanted.
Yes, I'm Kenzo Fuisde, a member of Upper House of Japan. I would like to ask a question to Dr. Lim and Dr. Kurokawa, government people. Several years ago, OECD discussed a national innovation system, which means structure of innovation, process of innovation, and the environment of innovation in one country. And I think that is very useful to launch a new innovation policy in one country. But unfortunately, very close to one country, domestic. So I would ask Dr. Lim and Dr. Kurokawa to analyze regional innovation system among East Asian countries to make a new collaboration in the field of East Asia. Because now innovation activity of scientists, researchers, and companies are very borderless. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad you brought up that question. It's cooperation. We talked about the selling proposition between Singapore and offering Vietnam, but actual cooperation within ASEAN. Mr. Lim, Mr. Kurokawa, who wants to take it first? Go ahead.
I think we organizing, in fact, next week we have like a global innovation ecosystem, and I think every individually or collectively as a nation, because cultural background and the historical background would have a strength and weakness. But in this globalized age, you have to really compete on your strengths, but also collaborate to complement your weakness. And that is the reason, because whatever the result you may have, you have to deliver. So I think this ecosystem is not a national innovation policy, but rather regional and global innovation ecosystem so that we could deliver the product and service for the greater number of perhaps niches and the needy, for the needs of the people, whatever that may be.
Good. Mr. Lim, do you think that's possible? A pan-ASEAN innovation policy? Chairman Lim?
I think I go back to the point about motivation. I think governments and businesses, and particularly governments, need to have a very clear view about how to make your way into the future. and how to create opportunity for yourself or for the various countries going into the future. And I think when governments are convinced that that the world, is a highly competitive, the best thing that a country can do for itself is to position its businesses and position its people, position especially its young people, to be able to take up the opportunities and the challenges that come along. That is a way by which we can create this congruence. So I think, like in the case of ASEAN, there's a lot of talk in terms of how we can come together. We're talking about an ASEAN community from 2015. It's good that we have these time deadlines. It is good that we have all these conversations about why we should be working together. But ultimately, it is by a series of conversations that people will increasingly come to this desire and come to this conviction that this is something really we have to do something about. There is no point just saying that it's somebody else's fault, or it is that the world is not favorable or it's not fair to us, but rather say this is something we want to do for ourselves. So I would say in the case of ASEAN, by continuous conversation, there's a greater and greater congruence in thinking. Then the next issue is one of politically how each country is able to move itself to go onto that path. So the direct answer to the question, can ASEAN come together to have some agreement on an innovation path? I would say that we will get there. We're not exactly there today, but I think in many instances it is not a lack of desire to do it. In some instances it is there's no full conviction yet that this is something we have to do, but most particularly of all, it's a matter of the political and economic situation in each country, whether it allows that path to be taken now or when it can be taken.
Okay, final question from the floor, if you can stand up.
Erika Mann, European Parliament. I have one question. I wonder if let me start differently. More and more global operating companies are coming from emerging powers or from developing countries. What kind of effect will this have to innovation policy in the future? Innovation policy somehow is embedded in cultural differences and cultural structures. So does this mean that we will see more diversity in innovation developments?
Good. Who wants to take that one on? We're a little bit tight on time. Mr. Kamath.
Again, I think point is very well taken. If you take India, for example, where I can speak of, I think innovation that will happen in our country will happen basically to serve the mass. Because basically innovation that is required there is for the bottom of the pyramid. And then if this is a scalable model, it will go outside. So whatever are the cultural requirements that drive this are going to come to the fore. And that advantage will be used as something that you will capitalize on in scaling it up globally.
Good. I want to just ask one final question, and if one or two panelists want to take it on. There was always this hope within the World Trade Organization that you would have a bigger voice coming from the developing countries. I remember covering it in the late 80s and 90s when the European Union and the U.S. came together with Japan and said, this is the deal, mates, you're going to sign this and this is the new agreement. Now we have the G20, quite powerful, with India and China involved, in Brazil, and the G8 camp. And they can't see eye to eye. But I want to direct it to this particular topic. Do you think it's going to be an inhibitor to future innovations for Asia because we have a difficult time getting the WTO agreement off the ground here? Is it going to stall innovations? Is it going to actually provide a window instead for Asia to go its own way and provide innovations? Is it a real defeat, do you think? Does anybody want to take that on? Is there frustration that we can't see an agreement moving forward the Doha round? Jim?
Well, I don't think it's going to stifle innovation at all. So much of it is goods-based. And it's a question of how much tariff different countries put on different goods. It's not going to stifle innovation at all. Innovation comes from those countries that have the most educated workforce. I've often said that we're no longer in a Cold War, as we once were, where we were in an arms race. Today's race is a race for minds. And whichever country, whichever region can create the greatest set of minds is the ones that will eventually dominate the world.
Good. I think that's a good spot to end because Professor, you want to give us a closing thought? Thanks, Jim.
Because I was in GH Science Advisor meeting last week, and I think one of the important things we have to discuss is to, once we make certain decisions, we have to really follow up on this thing, and each year. And that's, for example, Africa, in Glen Eagles, how much we have to follow up, and we did that, and that is a really pressing issue, and tell to the sort of world. And also what I said to you, like social entrepreneurship, women on the top, and also like poverty, and also sort of social awareness and corporate social responsibility. That may sound very optimistic, but it's happening. It may be small, like Gates Foundation, all the things. It's happening. So that's become a movement eventually, I hope, sooner the better.
Okay. Chairman Lim, you're the host today. Want to give us your final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to say that one of the effects of the difficulties in the WTO negotiations was it caused Singapore to take the kind of innovative steps to really expand on our network of free trade agreements and to go out and say, whoever that we can have these free trade agreements with, and that this is a good way to go. We say that they all the time must be WTO compliant and all the time they must be WTO plus. But this is a way out in the meantime until we can get multilateral agreement. So we think that even for some countries they'd be a little skeptical about this step, that more and more people are coming in and seeing the sense of getting this bilateral and multilateral agreements or regional agreements even while waiting for a big WTO multilateral agreement to come through.
Good. Okay, I want to thank our audience, particularly all around this area here, for asking the questions, and the panelists for being very succinct and very fruitful in their comments on the next generation innovation. Thanks very much for your time.